Welcome to In Focus Texas. I'm your host, Carla Leal. Texas leads the nation in population growth. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the Lone Star State is now home to more than 30 million residents. People from all over the country are moving to Texas, incentivized by jobs and lower cost of living compared to other big states. As this happens, affordable housing needs grow across the state. According to the Texas Affiliation of Affordable Housing Providers, almost half of Texans are spending more than 30% of their income on housing costs. This week, we are taking an in-depth look at this issue and how leaders and advocates are working to make home buying and renting more affordable for Texans. As Texas's population growth continues, our state legislators are working to address our housing and infrastructure needs. To better understand the actions our lawmakers are taking, Representative Cody Harris is joining us from our state capitol. Representative Harris, welcome. You authored House Bill 14, and just last month, Speaker Phelan included it in his legislative priorities. Tell us in simple terms, what would House Bill 14 do if it becomes law, and what motivated you to draft it?
That's a great question, Carla. So basically, it's a very simple bill. And what it does is says if a real estate developer who's building residential facilities, let's say an apartment complex, goes to a city or county and makes an application, currently they have in statute 30 to 45 days to either approve or deny or request changes to that application. And what we're seeing is a lot of times it's taking months to years for the cities to get these things approved or denied. So while they have statutory timeframes in place now between 30 and 45 days, we're saying, all right, if you fail to meet that, we're going to give you a 15-day grace period to correct it. But if you fail within that 15 days, then we're going to let the developers go and hire a third-party private engineer to follow the same process, but to give you the approval or the rejection of that site plan or inspection, whatever the case may be that you're applying for to the city. This would help speed up production and construction of these developments, and it would also help lower costs because you're bringing the private sector in to help alleviate the pressure that these cities are facing. It's really a relief valve for the cities is what it is.
So how is Speaker Phelan's support to HB 14 helping it, and how has it been received by your colleagues from across the aisle?
It's been received from my colleagues very favorably so far. We had it voted out of committee about a week ago, and so now it's sitting in calendars where it will make its way to the House floor soon. You know, being a House Bill 14, that with it comes the support of the Speaker, his stamp of approval on it, and that helps tremendously. Affordable housing has been one of his top priorities going back through the interim. That's one of the things that he said he wanted the House to focus on. This is an issue affecting lots of cities across our state. And so this is something that I think is going to be important to Texas as a whole. And I look forward to moving this bill through the process.
I was about to ask you, so if House Bill 14 becomes law, does this benefit some parts of Texas more than others? Or just give us examples of the improvements that Texans could see tied to housing and other developments.
While I think we're seeing the backlog happen more in the larger cities, it still applies across the board to all cities and counties where this relief valve would be an option for real estate developers. If it's taking longer than the statutory requirement for the cities and counties to approve their plats or surveys or whatever the situation is, then they can go this private party route. And a lot of cities are already using third-party engineers to outsource the work to them already. So we're just basically opening up to all cities across the state to be able to take part in it as well.
So there's other priorities in this legislative session that include like approving our budget, of course, and offering a property tax cut to Texas homeowners. How has the Texas House of Representatives addressed this so far?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. So I think one of the biggest priorities that we have is addressing property tax reform and relief, providing relief to Texas property taxpayers. And so what we've done in House Bill 2 and HJR 1 is $17.5 billion where we're buying down the local M&O school property taxes and replacing that with state revenue. $17.5 billion in state revenue that we are replacing your local property taxes of. And so that's the compression side, what we call compression, where we're buying that down. Then on top of that, the House is proposing that we move the appraisal cap on your valuations from 10% to 5%. But very importantly, that's not only applying to residential properties. That applies to every single property type across the board. So we're not going to be shifting the burden from residential to commercial. It applies to everyone.
All right, Representative Harris, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
The current state of the housing market in Texas is encouraging for home buyers. Our Michael Lozano tells us what can we expect for the rest of the year.
The housing market in the Lone Star State is still very much hot when you compare it to other states and regions, but the big thing is the cost for a single-family home is going down, something that realtors here say is good for the buyers and the sellers. It's the same story for thousands of Texans like Fort Worth resident Pedro Feliciano.
Coming up in a couple months, I'll be out and then back in my parents' house.
Welcome to our apartment.
And Dallas resident Molly Wilson.
They were gone within a day. So anything we found in our budget in this community, where our church is, where our jobs are.
2022 was a tough year to find a home that fit their budget. But the median price of a single-family home is seeing a steady decline. The North Texas Real Estate Information System's latest report shows the median price dropping nearly 13% from June to January, only a 4% increase from this time last year. Still not cheap, but according to North Texas realtor Megan Johnson, it's much more manageable.
The housing market is still very strong.
Johnson says it's translating into more people looking to buy a home, even with interest still sitting around 6% for a 30-year fixed rate.
We've especially seen an uptick in buyer demand, creating a very early spring season this year.
But Molly and her husband say it's cheaper right now to rent.
It's a great reminder of this is where we want to lay down roots.
Johnson says if buyers are still not comfortable with these current prices, then it's best to stay the course, finding ways to save money until the moment's right.
The more, constrained budgets that buyers and consumers are facing today are still going to play into the overall affordability equation.
Something people like Pedro and Molly intend to do.
Finding a place to live is not an easy task. After the break, we hear from one Texan who says she needed help to find her permanent home. Thanks for keeping it here. Finding affordable housing is not an easy task, especially in big cities. According to the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, Texas is one of the worst states for low-income renters. Our Jamil Donnet spoke with one Texan who says without the help from the state, she wouldn't have a home.
Keisha Prince is still settling into her new 2-bedroom apartment. A home she wouldn't have if it wasn't for her disability and Section 8 housing voucher.
You gotta have smoothies.
Even with that support, Prince's annual income is $16,500 a year for the single mother and her son.
It's tough finding a place.
She's the face to all the numbers in the National Low-Income Housing Coalition's annual The Gap report.
I'm coming off of a divorce, and I lost my job, my place, and all that stuff, and I was living on someone's couch.
Prince makes up the 22% of Texans who are extremely low-income renters. A disproportionate number are Black, Latino, and Native. The majority are in the labor force, seniors, or have a disability like Prince.
There's 904,000
So why does Texas continue to fail to provide housing for the most vulnerable? Texas Housing spokesperson Michael Deplan says the problem is multifaceted.
Like, how much time do we have?
Just as the report concludes, he says affordable rental shortages, lack of state-funded programs, and subsidized housing are the major factors.
There are so many avenues to expand affordable housing and make things better. We just have to have the political will to do so.
Prince is the lucky 1 in 4 extremely low-income renters in Texas who have access to affordable housing. And still, she says she's barely scraping by.
As tenants, we don't have a lot of rights, and everything's geared toward the landlord.
Yet the little disposable income she does have, she uses to pay it forward to those less fortunate than her.
A nonprofit organization that works to increase the supply and quality of affordable housing in our state is the Texas Affiliation of Affordable Housing Providers. Roger Arriaga is their executive director. Roger, thanks for connecting with us. How does TAAHP define affordable housing, and how big is the need for it here in Texas?
So the Texas Affiliation of Affordable Housing Providers, we go by TAP for short. Our whole purpose for existing is to be sure that there is an adequate amount of supply for those that need it. And the challenges you have just outlined in your report so far shows exactly what we're dealing with. And that is the workforce is absolutely challenging. They can't find enough places to live, and they're a big component to driving up the, because as we're working to get people here, and they don't have enough sufficient opportunities to find places to live, well then guess what? They're having to ask for more money, they're demanding more funds, wages are going up. But on top of that, it is a perfect storm. You have interest rates that are going up, you have material supply shortages. All of these things get into why it is difficult to put good quality affordable housing across the state of Texas. So it is issue that is not only really acute at lower income levels, but it's affecting everybody that's in the workforce, those that are seniors.
Let me ask you, Roger, for a long time, the low cost of rental homes in Texas and overall affordability attracted people from all over the U.S., and it seems like that's starting to change. What are some of the factors that are contributing to those current rising costs of rent and the limited affordable housing options?
So what ends up happening is the cost of housing across the board is going up. Families that are currently renting but would absolutely love to own a home are continuing to stay in their rental situations because there is not enough of it out there. So the rental rates are going up. So that's one factor that's keeping people from moving on. So as the rental rates go up for those that are needing to rent versus those that in the past used to be able to save enough money for a down payment to buy their first home, well, those families are still renting. And when you add in the issues of healthcare costs and transportation costs and work and job training costs, the families today that are required to rent simply because they don't have enough disposable income to spend on other things. They're spending 30% up, sometimes up to 50% of their income just to keep a roof over their heads. And that's just not sustained over the long haul and could potentially limit the economic vitality of the state.
So is it easy for affordable housing developers to build here in Texas? What type of incentives are available for them and what challenges can they face?
So the incentives, there aren't many, but I will tell you that you have to really understand the rigor of the state affordable housing programs and the various rigors that are expected at the various cities, because funding comes from a variety of sources. Some of it will come from tax credits to the federal government. Some of it, as you see in many cities like Austin, where they will have a general obligation bond package where you get to go vote and say, we need more funding to build more housing. The goal across the board is that if we can put more supply, over time, the pricing should moderate. But until we get there, we're dealing with a lot of strained household budgets.
Once affordable housing projects do materialize here in Texas, what steps does your organization and its members take to make sure those homes go to the Texans that are most in need?
So the Texas Affiliation of Affordable Housing Providers, although we advocate for all affordable housing, we primarily work within the space of the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program, which is a federal program that allows the use of tax credits to ultimately capitalize and use funds to build affordable housing. And so in exchange for that tax credit, the builders, the developers are required to serve families of lower income. But they do it in a way that has to be done through the rigor of the program, which is high quality. They must provide services to the tenants that live there. And they have to be, the developer has to stay in an ownership format for anywhere from 15 to 30 years. So these developments don't get flipped owner to owner to owner. Instead, they stay in a very stable place and they're owned by the same people for the entirety of the program.
Roger Arriaga, thank you for connecting with us once again. College students are also being affected by the rise in housing costs. Coming up, we'll tell you how city leaders in Austin are trying to help. Welcome back. Affordable housing is hard to come by these days, especially for college students. Our JJ Maldonado shows us how the city of Austin is hoping to help.
Kevin Roberts is a fourth-year student at the University of Texas at Austin. He's just one of the many students who is seeing rent prices increase.
Between 2020 to now, I think I've been paying an extra $200 maybe, roughly.
Kevin believes inflation is a factor behind the increased cost of living, but says most students in his shoes are facing unique challenges when it comes to affordable housing in Austin.
Because of those things, I think housing should be something that council looks into and to try to make it more affordable for students so they can focus on their education and not so much about paying bills.
Kevin has been in talks with the City of Austin's councilmember Ryan Alter. Councilman Alter says there is a lack of student housing development and housing that is affordable for them.
If someone is coming here to learn and attend one of our many colleges or universities, that we have affordable options for them to live either on or near campus. And right now that just doesn't exist for too many students.
Item 43 is adopted. Congratulations, Councilmember Alter.
A recently passed resolution by the city, written by Alter, is directing the city manager to explore partnerships with colleges and universities in the city for more affordable housing options. In 2004, a zoning plan called the University Neighborhood Overlay was created in response to the challenges of affordable housing in the West Campus Zone.
So what can we do to look at the land around campuses to maybe make it easier and more attractive for affordable student housing to be built?
The resolution will also have the city manager report back to City Council with recommendations by December 31st. In the meantime, Kevin says concerns with how to pay for rent are a distraction for many students.
Having people having to take out loans or having parents help them pay or having to work when people can be focusing more on their education.
As more Texans struggle to find affordable housing or become homeowners, researchers are paying attention. Dr. Jake Wegman from UT Austin School of Architecture joins me to better understand how they are analyzing our state's housing needs. Dr. Jake Wegman, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Carl.
Well, earlier this year, you were among a group of UT professors who released a report that looked into affordable housing and the opportunities and challenges across Texas. What areas did you explore and what did you find out?
Well, a lot of different things came up because for that report, we were talking to people involved in different parts of the housing situation. So we were talking to local officials, we were talking to people who build housing, we were talking to housing advocates, so a lot of different perspectives. You know, one big theme is that it would be good if we made it easier for new housing to be built, whether it's market rate housing or whether it's below market or affordable housing. And then another set of themes had to do with the government putting more money, perhaps state government, perhaps local governments, putting more money into assisting people that can't afford market rate housing.
In general, what does the Texas housing market look like right now, and how does it compare to the rest of the country?
You know, there was a really interesting report in the Wall Street Journal just last week, I think it was, and it split the country into the East and the West. It's a really unusual situation where the Western markets seem to be trending down in house prices, and the Eastern ones seem to still be going up. And most of the Texas ones were kind of more with the East, except for Austin. Austin's sort of in its own category. Austin shot up so far, so suddenly during the pandemic, but now it's come down a bit from its peak.
What ideas are you and your colleagues offering in that affordable housing report that we were talking about earlier to address the high cost of housing in Texas?
Well, one thing that came up and that you're actually seeing being seriously discussed in the current legislature section is for the state government to come in and actually, this is a mouthful, but restrict the ability of local governments to prevent housing. And so all of a sudden you're seeing several different bills, and who knows if they'll all pass or if any of them will pass, but it seems like there's a chance that at least a couple of them could. And that would take away the ability of local governments to prevent some of the housing that we need.
What else would you like to share about the state of housing with our fellow Texans?
The good news, I suppose, is that house prices are either going down as they are in Austin, or they are more level, or maybe increasing, modestly, as in some of the other metros. I guess the bad news is that we're probably going to see a real pullback in housing construction because interest rates have shot up in the last year.
Professor Weckman, thanks for stopping by.
Thank you for having me.
Well, that'll do it for this week's In Focus Texas. I'm Carla Leal. Thank you for joining us as we take a look at housing and infrastructure right here in the Lone Star State. Take care, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel, and for more refreshing stories about your community, click the subscribe button right over here. You can also download our Spectrum News app to get live news coverage, weather alerts, and more wherever you are. And don't forget to tune in to Channel 55 on Dish and DirecTV for live local reporting every single day. We'll see you then.